threatens to behead more Westerners, slaughter more non-Christians, and raise its flag above the White House, President Obama is proud to announce he's just knocked another item off his bucket list. President O toured the rocks at Stonehenge today after the NATO summit wrapped up in Wales. He did address the ISIS threat earlier at a press conference this morning, and it's still not clear what his plan is to destroy the terror network.
We have to act as part of the international community to degrade and ultimately destroy ISIL. Have the kind of coalition that will be required for the sustained effort we need to push ISIL back. The goal has to be to dismantle them. We are going to have to find effective partners on the ground to push back against ISIL.
Is it to destroy ISIS or push it back, Mr. President? You've also said you want to manage the jihadists. Good luck with that one. Even Henry Kissinger thinks you need to come up with a better strategy quick.
I think when they kill an American, when they cut the throat of an American on television and distribute that around the world, then a measured response is inappropriate. One cannot play this as a normal state-to-state game.
So, KG, let's go back to the bucket list, Stonehenge, the bucket list. You think becoming a good president is on his bucket list?
No. I mean, I think it's at the bottom of the list, and he's never going to get to it because the poor man is just the equivocator-in-chief. He's just not sure, and somebody's got to hold up the cue card to let him know who the good guys are, who the bad guys are, and the bad guys can't be managed. You can't say a strategy is pushing it back. Push back to where? To contain them? He's not on message with the rest of his administration or the rest of the organizations like CIA or Department of Defense. It's all over the place. It's the most schizophrenic national security that I've ever seen.
Robert?
Thoughts? Well, that was sort of schizophrenic in and of itself. I think
amazing.
That, I know, but amazing. And by the way, I love that dress. I know it's uncomfortable for you, but I like it. If you probably can guess, I don't really want to talk about ISIS much. Look, the idea of destroying ISIS is crazy. It's not going to happen. You are going to push them back. You shouldn't talk about wiping them out. They've been around since 1720. They ain't not going to be around. All of them are not going to disappear. But you can push them back. They're being pushed back as we speak now, and I think we're overestimating it.
We're still overestimating. Dana, you know, 9/11 is approaching. I think a lot of us are concerned that they would love another victory on American soil. Should we worry, or should we be okay with this, I don't know, bifurcated or schizophrenic national foreign policy?
Everything I ever learned about terrorists is that we think about the anniversaries a lot more than they do. So they'll strike us when they're ready. Of course, they like us to be worried that 9/11 is going to be a problem. I actually think that September 12th might be, you know, just as dangerous for us because they're waiting for us to let down our guard. I don't understand. There's a question that the media is not asking, which is this: why is there a scramble right now to try to push back ISIS? If indeed the president had in his presidential daily brief since January regular updates on ISIS and warnings, you had congressional testimony, why now all of a sudden scrambling at the NATO meeting to try to pull together a coalition to push back ISIS? Why not? You know, the American taxpayer invests a lot of money into our military, into our intel, and we entrust the President of the United States to uphold the most solemn obligation of his oath, which is to protect the country. Why we have to make scrambled eggs every time there's a crisis, it concerns me, and I think that is a question that the media has to ask along with the question of what do we do next. The thing about the Stonehenge thing, the picture, that I don't mind that the president spent 20 minutes sightseeing and knocking something off of his bucket list, but remember, this is the White House that says they're not that worried about optics. Today, to show the President of the United States standing alone amongst the rocks by himself, like there's the picture of that one woman there, but I would have asked David Cameron or somebody to walk with him, or get some staff, or have some, take the pilot, whatever you have to do, so that you don't have to. He's standing alone. I don't think it's a good optic.
He went there.
Image.
He went there because he wanted to see what real stones look like.
Oh, I got that. So hold on. There's two things. Can I stay in the Stonehenge for a second, Greg? Is it smart with all that's going on and everyone's waiting to see who he gets to come help us combating ISIS, to say, wow, this is so cool, Stonehenge, right? And here's another thing off my bucket list. Is he just tone deaf on what the American people are waiting on him? They don't want to hear Stonehenge, bucket list, coal. And what are we going to do about ISIS?
It's a symptom of a much larger issue. We cannot fight the real threat if we no longer can identify the real threat. The PC movement has effectively castrated 2 generations with identity politics. We put pigment over patriotism. We have taught that we must fight amongst ourselves. And so when we have an external threat, we don't even know what it looks like. We don't even think that it's actually threatening because we're too fearful also of being accused of bigotry. So we have a lot of great progress that has happened in this country, but it doesn't mean anything if you're going to be headless. So it's time, I believe, that the country has to unite. And it has to unite and stop bickering and look that there is something out there that wants all of us dead. It doesn't matter whether you're white, you're black, you're Hispanic, you're gay. What's the point of gay marriage if you don't have a head?
Yeah, but the point is, if we're going to unite, it's a good point.
Like that.
You don't want them to play golf. You don't want them to go to Stonehenge.
Right.
I assume it's okay because the bathroom, right?
Yeah,
but we would like him to not have fun while Americans are being beheaded.
He's starting a tour for 20 minutes of a
so lightly. Can you imagine with all eyes, not only in America, all eyes around the globe are waiting to see what he's going to do? Because frankly, ISIS is a threat to a lot of people, not just Americans. Everyone's waiting, and this is what he comes up with. Wow, this is really cool. Stonehenge. I just knocked something off my bucket list.
He's bombing them every day. And the other thing I would say to you is we spent a lot of money by the American taxpayers to put together a military in Iraq. They didn't do his job.
All right, let me do this. Let's do this. ISIS is spreading. This is really...
Why not? I mean, what do you think they do their job?
You know why? It's okay for you to go ahead and put down the Iraqi people who have also suffered a lot of loss of lives because you've got Muslims killing Muslims over there. The bottom line is if we had set them up for success instead of failure by providing an infrastructure to help them continue to...
That's what we did.
I'm sure they'd be more than happy to defend
This is a perfect transition for this. ISIS is spreading. Not everyone is surprised. Listen to this very, very carefully. Back in 2007, President Bush 43 predicted what would happen in Iraq if the U.S. withdrew too soon. Watch this one very closely. He was spot on.
To begin withdrawing before our commanders tell us we're ready would be dangerous for Iraq, for the region, and for the United States. It would mean surrendering the future of Iraq to Al-Qaeda. It would mean that we'd be risking mass killings on a horrific scale. It would mean we allow the terrorists to establish a safe haven in Iraq to replace the one they lost in Afghanistan. It would mean increasing the probability that American troops would have to return at some later date to confront an enemy that is even more dangerous.
7 years ago, Dana.
Well, he was very clear-eyed about the threat and about the concern. And right after that moment, that was in July of 2007, then General David Petraeus comes back from Iraq and tells the president, I think there's a better way. And the president says, well, what is it? He says, and David Petraeus explains the surge, and the president says, General, if we do that, then we're doubling down. And he says, no, Mr. President, we're all in. That is widely considered one of the most courageous presidential decisions in modern times because it was so unpopular. Nobody wanted to send more troops.
And successful.
But it took about 6 months for it to be successful. But once it took hold, it really was handing a victory to President Obama. And I believe that he left too soon.
That's one.
Okay, that's a good word.
Well, can we get Bob's reaction to that? Here it is. Man, 7 years ago, warned exactly this was going to happen if we left too soon. A lot of people say we left too soon. Can you admit now, Bob, Obama screwed up? We left too soon.
If you would produce what the President Bush said was we have to wait for the commanders to give us their best advice. As far as I know, I could be wrong, but as far as I know, the commanders did say that they agree with the withdrawal schedule that they had. Now, if you have somebody that says they didn't, then tell me about it. Well, that's exactly what the president said. The president said with the command, we have to listen to the commanders.
If I remember, I could be completely wrong about this, but I think he replaced all the commanders that thought we should stay. If I'm not mistaken.
Bob, there was on the record comment from generals in the region saying that they were concerned, and they were accused of just wanting to perpetuate war. I don't think that was their aim. I think that they wanted to finish the job and do it well, because their concern was that then we have this situation, which means that we have to do even more difficult things in the future with less people on the ground. In addition to that, when you pull the troops out, you also pulled out, you meaning the United States, we took all of our intel people with them. Right. intel is the most important asset that you have on the ground. So that way you find out ISIS is planning to take over, the size of Great Britain. And start raising taxes on people, killing them. I told you yesterday, ISIS is raising about $120 million a day in taxes.
Right. Okay, so and taxes could mean paying ISIS to stay alive.
Right.
All right. Okay, guys, you want to jump in on President Bush?
I'm really tired of the who said what first, because we have a bigger issue here, and it's a country that can't unite anymore because we don't see the point. We're all busy playing team sports with this issue when we could just say, all right, maybe Bush was right, maybe Christopher Hitchens was right all along, but nobody listened to him because he was an atheist. But he had called this stuff, years ago, but nobody listened to him. The fact is, the who was right stuff has to stop. We have to somehow get this country together and marshal our forces to fight an external evil and get rid of this stupid team sport BS, because it doesn't help us at all. What helps us is finding a new leader, somebody who can emerge and actually speak eloquently about what's wrong with this world, or we are totally doomed. The squabbling doesn't help.
Well, I agree with that, Greg, except for that President Obama has about a third of his presidency left.
True.
So, there will be a new leader, but it's 2.5 years away.
There might have to be somebody that isn't him, that's in his party or from another country, who stands up and prevents the Western decline. Because that's what we're talking about here, a Western decline. But the problem is, the West doesn't care.
Can I throw something else? Instead of who was right, how about I was wrong? How about Obama saying, okay,
he's not going to do that.
Why not?
It's not in his psychological profile. I mean, really, Psych 101. That's not who he is. He's never going to say and admit that he was wrong. His first response is to pivot and blame someone in the past. His favorite thing is to blame one of the Bushes. Why not? Blame Bush, because he doesn't want to take ownership.
I defy you to tell me one time he said that recently.
Blame Bush?
Blame Bush, yeah.
This is what he does all the time.
I'll tell you what.
This is Bush's problem too, remember? Because, he wanted to go for the democratization of Iraq and
Greg says that where Obama was and where I was, and I remain, it was a mistake to go into Iraq, and I remain there, and we're staying there, and I just think it was a bad war. So, you leave it at that. We didn't want to agree.
And that's the point. You feel that way, other people feel that way. Why don't we just say enough and look at the current threat right now? That's all we have to do. The true unifier here might not be Obama. It may in fact be an act against us that will force us to unify, and all of these squabbles will go away.
It'll move the polls, and then
one
maybe
leader is going to have. But the president actually then has to make decisions,
right,
and not be afraid of American power and American success.
Sadly, he may be forced to. Because it looks that way.
But who surrounding him is actually going to do that?
Maybe, believe it or not, maybe Biden. Who knows?
I guess.
I'm getting desperate.
The point is that the public sentiment and the politics show that he has no other recourse. Then he will be forced to act, but it will be too late, and it will be due to some catastrophic, horrible event, because he doesn't have it in him to make this leadership decision like Bush did at the time, to double down and do the surge. Like you said, it was politically courageous. It was the right thing to do. And that's where great leaders step in to do not what the poll told them to do, what they know in their heart and mind is best interest of the people in this country. We're waiting, Mr. President.
Before we go?
I'm sorry to listen to this bashing, President. I'll just let it go.
Okay, we're going to leave it there then.